Hello from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. I'm Stephen Clark, editor of Spaceflight Now, bringing you live coverage of tonight's countdown for the Starlink 4-34 mission. If you've been keeping up with this mission, you'll know that the last two countdowns on consecutive nights have been scrubbed due to thunderstorms in the area around the launch pad here in Florida. Tonight, the weather is improved. There's no rain falling currently here at the Kennedy Space Center or at the launch pad. However, there is a thunderstorm cell just off to the north that the weather team is currently tracking. Right now, that storm does appear to be moving west and dissipating somewhat. So that storm may not be an issue for the launch tonight. The liftoff time is currently set for 9:27 p.m. Eastern Time or 1:27 a.m. UTC. There's currently a lightning warning out at the launch pad due to this nearby thunderstorm. We'll wait to see if that lightning warning is lifted in the coming minutes. Liftoff is 1 hour, 10 minutes, and 26 seconds away. And the SpaceX launch team is hoping that the weather conditions will be go tonight. They've been red or no-go the last two nights. And if conditions look favorable, the team will give the go-ahead to start loading propellants into the Falcon 9 rocket at T-minus 35 minutes. That'll be around 8:52 p.m. Eastern Time when we expect to hear the call that propellant loading is beginning. The team will be polled ahead of that time to make sure all technical parameters are ready for the countdown tonight, and they'll get a weather briefing from the launch weather officer from Space Launch Delta 45. That's the U.S. Space Force unit that manages the eastern range here at Cape Canaveral. They're responsible for overseeing public safety for all of the launches that originate from Kennedy Space Center and Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Tonight's mission is set to take off from Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. That's the facility you're looking at live right now on a so far rain-free evening out at the launch pad. There is that storm cell I just mentioned off to the north, but it is moving away from the launch site at this time, and there's currently no other thunderstorm activity in the immediate vicinity of the spaceport. You may see occasional flashes of lightning in the sky. This view is looking roughly east from our camera position out toward the launch pad. The storm is off to the left and behind the camera, but some of these flashes are lighting up the sky enough to see them even looking away from the thunderstorm out toward the pad. Tonight's mission, if it is able to take off, is set to deploy 54 Starlink internet satellites for SpaceX's broadband network. This will be the 42nd launch of a Falcon 9 rocket of the year, and it'll be the 40th space launch overall from Cape Canaveral or Kennedy Space Center this year. That includes launches by SpaceX, United Launch Alliance, and Astra. This particular Falcon 9 rocket is flying with a first stage booster, number 1067 in SpaceX's fleet of reusable boosters. This booster will be launching for the 7th time on this mission. Again, liftoff, weather permitting, is set for 9:27 p.m. Eastern Time or 1:27 a.m. UTC. Here's a look at the weather situation here along Florida Space Coast this evening. There is this thunderstorm cell that has been passing north of the spaceport area. The storm is weakening a bit and moving inland. The proximity of this storm did trigger Phase 2 lightning warnings at Space Launch Complex 40 and several other areas of the spaceport here tonight. Those lightning warnings remain in effect, but we're hoping to see those lifted as this storm grows weaker and moves farther away from the launch base here. The countdown is now approaching the T-minus 1 hour mark. So the launch time of 9:27 p.m. Eastern, now about 1 hour away. We're about 25 minutes away from the start of propellant loading on the Falcon 9 tonight. And there's T-minus 1 hour, so 60 minutes remaining until tonight's instantaneous launch opportunity. In this view of pad 40, you can see the Falcon 9 standing vertical. The rocket stands 229 feet or 70 meters in height. It's powered by 2 stages. The first stage is the flight-proven Booster 1067 vehicle on its 7th flight tonight. The second stage is a new part of the Falcon 9. It's new on every Falcon 9 launch. It's powered by a single Merlin vacuum engine. And then the 54 Starlink satellites are buttoned up inside the payload fairing at the very top of the Falcon 9. The structures you see on each side of the vehicle with the flashing hazard lights are lightning towers. These are towers that protect the Falcon 9 along with workers at the pad if they're out there during normal operations. Obviously they're not out there right now as the countdown is in the final hour before liftoff, but these lightning masts are there to protect the vehicle and the workforce from lightning strikes at the launch pad. If you look closely, you can see those towers are connected by catenary wires that run between the towers and run down to the ground as part of that lightning protection system. Now 58.5 minutes remaining until tonight's launch opportunity for the Starlink 4-34 mission. Now 54 minutes remaining until launch time. You can see a security helicopter passing just offshore behind the Falcon 9 launch pad right now. This is part of the normal, customary sweeps of airspace and the waters around the launch pad to make sure that those areas are clear of all personnel and clear of the public for range safety reasons in order for tonight's launch to be able to occur at 9:27 p.m. Eastern Time, 1:27 UTC. Now inside of 20 minutes until the start of propellant loading on the Falcon 9. In around 15 minutes or so, we expect to hear the call out from the launch team of a go or no-go for that propellant loading process and the start of the 35-minute automated countdown sequencer. Now 48 minutes until tonight's launch opportunity at 9:27 p.m. Eastern Time, 1:27 UTC. You're now hearing a few raindrops on our camera here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center, about 4 miles away from the Falcon 9 launch pad. While this storm just to the north of the Kennedy Space Center has moved inland and is moving farther away, the radar does show some shower activity building in the direction of the Space Center from Central Florida. This does appear to be very light rain so far here at Kennedy Space Center. SpaceX's launch team will have to decide in the next 12 minutes whether to proceed with propellant loading tonight. There remains a Phase 2 lightning warning in effect at Space Launch Complex 40, as well as other parts of the Space Center. We'll stand by in the next, hopefully in the next 10 minutes or so, we'll hear a go or no go for propellant loading. SpaceX's launch team, if everything else is ready, could potentially decide to load propellants into the Falcon 9. We're not sure if that's the decision that will be taken, but they've been able to load propellants into the vehicle before with an iffy weather forecast, with an uncertain weather forecast, and then take the countdown into the final minutes in hopes that the weather does become go or green before the time of liftoff. Here's a look at the radar right now with that storm off to the northwest, moving away from the Space Center. But you can see some light rain beginning to fill in around the spaceport off to the west. There's some more steady rainfall in the Orlando area, and some of that does appear to be streaming east toward the Space Center. The rain itself is not a constraint to launch for this mission, but lightning is, as well as cloud cover, such as thick clouds or cumulus clouds or anvil clouds that are associated or attached to thunderstorms that may hold electrical charges. Those are all concerns and criteria that the launch weather officer will be monitoring throughout the countdown and giving the team a go or no-go on each of those rules. Now T-minus 45 minutes and counting. If you haven't had a chance to do so, please like this stream. It helps us bring this coverage to more people and a bigger audience. So if you haven't done so yet, please like our stream here on YouTube. We also invite you to become a member of our YouTube channel. We have different membership tiers available for you to choose from, and depending on which level you select, you can gain access to exclusive video features, some bonus materials there for our members. You'll also be supporting our coverage and helping us continue to bring you and the world of space enthusiasts around the world live coverage of countdowns and launches. Now 44 minutes to go until tonight's launch time, 9 minutes until the start of propellant loading, if the team gives the go for that to begin at T-minus 35 minutes.
On countdown.net, reminder that propellant load and launch go no-go poll is open for your buys this time. Still looking for buys from CE and RC.
T-minus 38 minutes, 12 seconds. We just heard the call from the launch team that the poll for go or no-go for propellant loading is underway. They're waiting for the final members of the team to register their status before proceeding into the automated countdown sequencer, which begins at T-minus 35 minutes. Concurrently with the start of propellant loading, also at the same time, T-minus 35 minutes.
Launch director to countdown.net. Polling is complete. We have a go to proceed into propellant load.
We did just hear from SpaceX Launch Control that the team is go for proceeding into propellant load tonight. That will begin in about 2 minutes' time. We haven't heard any official word on whether the local weather conditions are indeed acceptable for launch, but there's still time for those weather conditions to clear. Now inside of 37 minutes, less than 2 minutes to go until the start of propellant load.
And a reminder on abort instructions for non-urgent no-go conditions. Brief CE or LD and they'll approve aborting the countdown. For urgent issues affecting the safety of the operation, operator shall call hold on the countdown.net. Launch control abort the launch auto sequence immediately and proceed into the launch abort auto. At T-minus 10 seconds, launch control be hands-off and relying on automated abort criteria for the remainder of the count. Finally, as discussed on the anomaly net, in the event of a weather no-go condition, we will continue the countdown to T-minus 30 seconds before stopping to gain additional engineering data for M1D.
T-minus 36 minutes and counting. We just heard that weather or that status briefing from the launch director at SpaceX Launch Control. We're less than a minute away from the start of propellant loading. And according to the launch director, the plan in this terminal countdown will be to continue the clock down to T-minus 30 seconds, even if the weather conditions are no-go for launch. So we expect to see the countdown go all the way to T-minus 30 seconds, even if the weather is red. And the launch team says this is to gain further engineering data on the Merlin 1D engine, which is the engine that's powering the first stage. There are 9 of these Merlin 1D engines on the first stage of the Falcon 9. So SpaceX will take the countdown all the way to T-minus 30 seconds to gain engineering data, even if the weather conditions are no-go. We just heard the launch auto sequence has started, so we're inside of 35 minutes until liftoff. Kerosene and liquid oxygen propellants are now starting to flow into the Falcon 9 rocket. About 1 million pounds of propellants will be loaded into the vehicle over the next half hour or so, all the way to, down until T-minus 2 minutes. That's when the final liquid oxygen will be flowed into the vehicle. Currently, kerosene and liquid oxygen are flowing into stage 1, and kerosene fuel is flowing into stage 2. Liquid oxygen load will begin on stage 2 at T-minus 16 minutes. T-minus 31 minutes, 37 seconds. Here's a look right now at the radar picture here on Florida Space Coast. Some of these green returns may not be associated with any actual rainfall, but we can tell you it is raining here at Kennedy Space Center, just a few miles away from the Falcon 9 launch pad. You may be able to hear some of those raindrops falling on our camera here at Kennedy Space Center. Again, SpaceX's launch team gave a briefing a few minutes ago. The plan is to take the countdown all the way to T-minus 30 seconds, even if the weather is no-go for launch, to gather engineering data. But the team hopes the weather will be acceptable to fly this mission tonight with 54 Starlink internet satellites. Liftoff is set for an instantaneous opportunity at 9:27 p.m. Eastern Time, 1:27 UTC. Here's a look at the expected trajectory for tonight's launch. If the rocket is able to get off the ground tonight, the Falcon 9 will head northeast from Space Launch Complex 40, which we've labeled here at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. This red line shows the flight path out over the Atlantic Ocean. The rocket will be targeting an orbit with an inclination of 53.2 degrees, and in order to reach this orbit, the rocket either has to fly northeast or southeast. Tonight's mission is heading northeast. It'll fly parallel to the east coast of the United States, off the Outer Banks of North Carolina, east of New York City, east of Cape Cod, and then out over the Canadian Maritime provinces. The first stage booster will target a landing on the drone ship. Just read the instructions, which is holding position about 400 miles or roughly 650 kilometers downrange. That's approximately due east of Charleston, South Carolina. Tonight's mission is expected to last about 15 minutes from liftoff until the time of deployment of the 54 Starlink internet satellites. And we do have a weather update for you from SpaceX. Weather is not looking very good for launch tonight, but the team is proceeding into propellant loading. The current forecast shows just a 10% chance of favorable weather for tonight's launch opportunity, so a 90% chance of violation of one or multiple weather criteria. Again, the weather this week has been problematic for SpaceX with 2 scrubs for this mission on Tuesday night and Wednesday night. And the probability, according to the launch weather officer, is 90% that the weather will again force a scrub tonight. But the team is holding out hope for a turn in the weather conditions, a more favorable turn. And in the meantime, they're gathering valuable engineering data during this propellant loading process. And we expect the countdown to continue down to T-minus 30 seconds, even if the weather is not going to allow the launch tonight. This mission is designated Starlink 434, and there are 54 Starlink internet satellites on board the Falcon 9 rocket as it awaits a launch opportunity tonight, weather permitting. This is what the Starlink satellites look like in launch configuration. This is a file photo from SpaceX before a previous Starlink launch showing the stack of satellites flat-packed onto their launch vehicle adapter, being prepared for encapsulation inside the Falcon 9's payload fairing. You can see one half of that payload shroud moving into position there to begin closing up around the spacecraft, around the payloads for launch. The 54 satellites are held down to the rocket with 4 retention rods. Those retention rods will be jettisoned in orbit at the proper time, roughly 15 minutes after launch for tonight's flight, to allow the 54 Starlink satellites to fly free of the rocket. They'll separate from one another through differential drag naturally from aerodynamic forces, and then they'll deploy solar panels and begin going through their automated test campaign before orbit raising to reach their operational altitude. Each of these spacecraft weighs between 250 and 300 kilograms. The entire stack of 54 satellites totals about 16.7 metric tons. These satellites are fitted with ion propulsion systems. They'll use these electric plasma thrusters for orbital maneuvers. And these thrusters will propel the satellites from their initial transfer or drop-off orbit after launch to their operational altitude at 335 miles or 540 kilometers. SpaceX builds these satellites at the Starlink Development Facility in Redmond, Washington, near Seattle. Here's a look at what the Starlink user terminal looks like. This square-shaped phased array antenna is what SpaceX sends out to subscribers to be able to connect to the Starlink network. It comes with a modem as well, and subscribers can pay a monthly fee for consumer-grade fixed broadband. That's about $110 a month. And through that, they'll gain access to the Starlink network and the low-latency, high-speed broadband service it provides. At last check, SpaceX says the Starlink service is currently available in 40 countries. Now inside of 24 minutes, 12 seconds to be exact, you're continuing to hear the sounds of light but steady rainfall here at Kennedy Space Center. SpaceX says there is just a 10% chance of favorable weather for launch of this mission tonight. There is an instantaneous launch opportunity at 9:27 p.m. Eastern Time, 1:27 a.m. UTC. So there's no time to wait for any improved weather conditions. If the launch does not happen at 9:27 p.m., you'll have to wait until tomorrow night at the earliest for the next launch attempt. Now 21 minutes, 10 seconds.
Stage 1, Pogo.
Now T-minus 21 minutes until tonight's instantaneous launch opportunity. Again, there's just a 10% chance of favorable weather, but the countdown is continuing in hopes of a break in the weather conditions tonight. Here's a look at the Falcon 9's expected flight track. It'll head northeast from Kennedy Space Center, or from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, rather, to place these 54 Starlink Internet satellites into orbit. The first stage will target a landing on the drone ship. Just read the instructions, about 400 miles downrange. T-minus 20 minutes and 15 seconds.
RP1 load is complete.
We just heard the call that Stage 2 RP1 load is complete. So this is the call that confirms kerosene fuel has been fully loaded into the second stage of the Falcon 9 rocket. And at the same time, we saw this big vent, which is a customary sign during the Falcon 9 countdown at about T-minus 20 minutes, which marks the start of the chill down of the liquid oxygen transfer lines that lead up the strongback for loading of liquid oxygen into the second stage. So just an update on fueling status or propellant loading status. The first stage continues to be loaded with kerosene and liquid oxygen. These densified propellants will power the 9 Merlin 1D engines on the first stage for this mission. The second stage is now full of kerosene fuel, and liquid oxygen will begin flowing into Stage 2 in about 3 minutes. T-minus 18 minutes and counting. Here's a look at the major milestones in tonight's countdown. We've already passed the first few of these milestones with the go for propellant loading, which we heard about 20 minutes ago. And then at T-minus 35 minutes, that Falcon 9 auto sequencer began, and the propellants began loading into the Falcon 9 on pad 40. We heard the call about 3 minutes ago that the second stage has been fully loaded with kerosene fuel. The next step will be at T-minus 16 minutes or so, when SpaceX will begin loading cryogenic liquid oxygen into the second stage of the Falcon 9. That'll be the final propellant tank to be loaded tonight. And then at T-minus 7 minutes, we expect to hear a call for M1D chill down. This is when the Merlin 1D engines on the first stage begin their thermal conditioning process, known as chill down, to make sure they're at the right temperature, to make sure all the components of those engines are at the right temperatures for ignition. At T-minus 5.5 minutes, the first stage should be full of kerosene fuel. At T-minus 4.5 minutes, the strongback will begin retracting away from the Falcon 9 rocket to get into position for engine start. And then at T-minus 2 minutes, liquid oxygen will be full on both stages of the Falcon 9 rocket. And the fill and drain valves will be closed, and the Falcon 9 will be fully tanked at that point with 1 million pounds of propellant.
Stage 2 LOX load has started.
We just heard Stage 2 liquid oxygen loading is underway. In the final 60 seconds of the countdown, the Falcon 9's onboard computer will take command of the final steps to prepare the vehicle for launch. SpaceX's launch director will give their final go for liftoff or no go, which may be the case due to the weather tonight, at T-minus 45 seconds. And if the weather is good, the countdown will continue down to engine ignition at T-minus 3 seconds. And then if the 9 Merlin engines pass their automated health checks, the Falcon 9 will be cleared for liftoff at T0. Hold down clamps will release to allow the Falcon 9 to begin the climb off of pad 40. Again, if the weather is no-go, the countdown will stop at T-minus 30 seconds before it enters that final sequence, including engine start. So the countdown will stop at T-minus 30 seconds if the weather remains red. T-minus 15 minutes now and 20 seconds. Here's a look at the weather radar. The storm that we've been tracking to the north is now largely dissipated and is well inland. But there's still a thick blanket of cloud cover, and the launch weather officer is monitoring data on the electrical charge in those clouds. Not only must there be no lightning within 10 nautical miles of the launch pad, there are also restrictions on the thickness of the clouds as well as on cumulus clouds that may hold an electrical charge, because there is a risk for the rocket as it climbs through cloud layers to trigger its own lightning strike. Now 14.5 minutes to go. An update on propellant loading status. The second stage has been fully loaded with kerosene fuel and is now being loaded with liquid oxygen, which is chilled down to several hundred degrees below 0 Fahrenheit. The first stage of the Falcon 9 is currently being loaded with both of its propellants, kerosene and liquid oxygen. T-minus 11 minutes, 22 seconds. You're seeing a few Fireflies joining us for our live coverage here at Kennedy Space Center. You see those green flashes intermittently. Those are from fireflies here on a very sticky, muggy night with light rain continuing to fall here at the Cape Canaveral Spaceport. 11 minutes until tonight's launch opportunity, which is set for 9:27 p.m. Eastern Time, 1:27 a.m. UTC. The big uncertainty is the weather. There is still a 90% chance of unacceptable weather conditions for this launch attempt tonight. And SpaceX is planning to continue the countdown all the way until T-minus 30 seconds to gather engineering data, even if the weather remains no-go. You're seeing vapors streaming away from the Falcon 9 and at the Strongback, which is standing next to the Falcon 9 on pad 40. These are from the buildup of frost and condensation as liquid oxygen, which is chilled and densified to a few hundred degrees below zero, continues flowing into both stages of the Falcon 9 rocket this evening. Now inside of T-minus 10 minutes to go until tonight's launch opportunity for the Starlink 434 mission. Booster you're watching on pad 40 tonight is number 1067 in SpaceX's inventory. This will be its 6th flight to space. Here's a view of its flight history. It debuted back on June the 3rd of last year with a space station resupply mission, CRS-22. It launched again last November on NASA's Crew 3 mission, carrying 4 astronauts into space on the way to the International Space Station. Launched again about a month later in December with the Turkish Turksat 5B communication satellite, and then was refurbished for the Crew 4 mission, another crew flight to the space station for NASA on April the 27th of this year. And most recently, it launched on July the 14th on the CRS-25 mission. This was another Dragon resupply mission to the International Space Station. So this is its first Starlink flight. It's flown 4 missions for NASA, as well as 1 commercial mission for Turksat. Booster 1067 awaiting its opportunity to launch on flight number 6 in its career. T-minus 8 minutes and counting. The next major event will be the startup chill down on the Merlin 1D engines on the first stage. That should happen at about T-minus 7 minutes. If you're just joining us and haven't done so yet, please like our stream here on YouTube. That helps us bring this coverage to a wider audience. Helps us get more people excited about spaceflight as well. And also, please consider becoming a member of our YouTube channel. We have different membership tiers available for you to choose from. Depending on which level you choose, you can gain access to exclusive video features. So we have bonus material on our YouTube channel for members only. And you'll also be supporting our coverage. The launch rate here in Florida and around the world is growing ever faster. This is launch number 40 from here at Cape Canaveral or Kennedy Space Center so far this year, and the 118th orbital launch attempt worldwide so far in 2022.
Engine chill has started.
Now inside of 7 minutes until liftoff, weather permitting. The chill down of the Merlin 1D engines is underway. This is the thermal conditioning process to bring those engine components down to proper temperatures before the flow of cryogenic liquid oxygen into those engines. This liquid oxygen is chilled several hundred degrees below zero, and this chill down procedure involves flowing a little bit of that liquid oxygen into the engine compartment through some of the engine plumbing to condition those components and that hardware for the more rapid flow of liquid oxygen once those engines are ignited.
Stage 1 RP1 load is complete.
T-minus 6 minutes. The first stage liquid oxygen tank is now fully loaded. So about 46,000 gallons of rocket-grade kerosene, known as RP1, has been pumped into the vehicle tonight. Liquid oxygen loading continues. That oxidizer will continue flowing down until T-minus 2 minutes or so. T-minus 5.5 minutes. We want to give a big thanks to those of you who just became members of our YouTube channel. That really helps us continue our coverage of the space program and the launch industry.
Falcon tanks are pressing for strong back retract. Strong back retract.
T-minus 3 minutes, 30 seconds. You can now see that strong back moving away from the Falcon 9 rocket. It's moving back to an angle of about 1.5 degrees from the Falcon 9. At liftoff, the strong back will retract further away to an angle of about 45 degrees to clear the way for the Falcon 9 to begin its vertical climb from pad 40. Weather conditions remain the major issue in the countdown. Still a 90% chance of unfavorable weather for
Stage 1 LOX load
liftoff.
is complete.
Just 3 minutes remain until the launch time. There is just an instantaneous launch time available tonight at 9:27 p.m.
Stage 1 Pogo.
Liquid oxygen loading is now complete on the first stage. Liquid oxygen will continue loading into the second stage for a few more seconds. Again, if this rocket does get off the ground, it's about a 15-minute flight from the launch pad until deployment of the 54 Starlink internet satellites. The rocket will be heading northeast from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
T-minus 90 seconds. We just heard the call that the second stage liquid oxygen tank has been fully loaded. So SpaceX has a fully tanked vehicle.
Ground gas closeout.
About 1 million pounds of propellants have been loaded into the vehicle over the last 30 minutes. The vehicle now weighs about 1.2 million pounds fully loaded. That includes the propellant mass and the structural mass of the vehicle. Coming up on T-minus 60 seconds and the handoff of the countdown to the Falcon 9's onboard computer. There's T-minus 60 seconds. If the weather has not gone green, we expect the countdown to terminate at T-minus 30
Falcon 9
seconds.
is in startup.
Falcon 9 is currently in startup. We'll stand by for that final weather call.
Hold on countdown 1. Launch is no-go due to weather violations. And launch abort is running.
And you just heard the hold call from SpaceX's launch director due to unfavorable weather. So the liftoff of the Falcon 9 will not be happening tonight. If you're just joining us, the Falcon 9 rocket remains on planet Earth tonight. The launch time was around 2 minutes ago at 9:27 p.m. Eastern Time, but SpaceX called off the launch attempt due to unfavorable weather. This was the third straight day that bad weather has stood in the way of SpaceX launching this Starlink 4-34 mission with the next batch of 54 Starlink Internet satellites. The SpaceX team scrubbed countdowns on Tuesday night and Wednesday night due to bad weather. The weather was somewhat better tonight, but still in violation of the launch weather criteria. So the next launch opportunity will be tomorrow night, Friday night, for this mission. We expect the launch time tomorrow to be around 9:05 p.m. Eastern Time or 1:05 a.m. UTC. Before we go, we want to invite you to go to our Spaceflight Now store. You can go to shop.spaceflightnow.com to view our selection of memorabilia and mission patches. One of our newest arrivals is the Crew 5 patch that you see here. This is the mission patch for the next launch of astronauts on a Crew Dragon spacecraft. This is the NASA and SpaceX Crew 5 mission scheduled for launch from Kennedy Space Center no earlier than October the 3rd. This mission will be commanded by Nicole Mann, a veteran U.S. Marine Corps fighter pilot and test pilot. She will be joined by 3 other crew members on the way to the International Space Station. This crew will be on the space station for about a half year or so as part of the next expedition crew. So you can buy this mission patch on our Spaceflight Now store at shop.spaceflightnow.com. That's shop.spaceflightnow.com to purchase this patch as well as other NASA and SpaceX mission patches and other items for sale. And your support through our Spaceflight Now store helps us continue our coverage of launch activity and the space industry around the world. Before we go, we also want to thank those of you who became new members of our Spaceflight Now YouTube channel tonight. We really appreciate your support. We hope you enjoy your membership. And your support helps us, again, continue doing what we do and bringing this coverage to you. If you haven't become a member yet, you can look at the various membership levels we have available on our YouTube channel. And depending on which YouTube or which membership level you choose, you can gain access to exclusive bonus video features. So SpaceX is now beginning the steps to drain propellants from the Falcon 9 rocket on Pad 40. The Falcon 9 was fully loaded with kerosene and liquid oxygen when SpaceX's launch team aborted the countdown about 30 seconds before the scheduled launch time due to unfavorable weather. So once the propellants are drained from the vehicle, SpaceX will set up for the next launch attempt, which is expected to be no earlier than tomorrow night. The launch time tomorrow night would be 9:05 p.m. Eastern Time, 1:05 a.m. UTC. This would be the 4th launch attempt for this mission after 3 straight days of weather scrubs. So until tomorrow, thanks for joining us tonight. We'll hope for better weather conditions tomorrow. The latest official forecast we have for tomorrow night shows a 50-50 chance of favorable weather. We'll see if the weather probabilities, weather odds are on the more favorable side tomorrow night. We'll begin our coverage a little more than an hour before liftoff time, and we'll hope you'll join us tomorrow night for the next launch attempt for the Starlink 434 mission. I'm Stephen Clark. I've been reporting live from Kennedy Space Center in Florida tonight, and we'll see you tomorrow.